Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And we're on our 49th webinar. Again, hopefully some of you, especially Geek Dude too, brought some stuff to share. We don't have a lot of actual code to work through. And if you have ideas, submit ideas, right? It's just, the problem is we've covered so many things in the past. We're on our 49th webinar, and we're just kind of running out of stuff to cover without going over the same things multiple times. As you'll notice, we had 43 registrants. We start off, everyone's muted except for us, but if you have something to say, unmute yourself. It's just because with, it looks like we have about a dozen people in here, and even when you get to 3, it's crazy how much people talk over each other when there's 3 people. 2, you can do it, but after that, it's hard. So you can either use the chat to ask questions, or, unmute yourself and just kind of butt in when there's a pause. So, with that, let's keep moving forward. Here are the latest 3 podcasts. These have been released. This first one was interesting, Jackie. That was the one from the last webinar. I had mentioned controls in the webinar, and I said something like they're superior than this, and you're like, well, superior. I don't know if I'd say superior. So that was the podcast on that. And then we were talking about the hacking and botting rules on the forum.
Yeah.
In discussing the keeping a script in one or keeping it separate. But even though we have these next 2, we haven't released yet, right? They're the next 2 in the queue finally. But they were, to me, I think everyone watching this is really going to love these. So I highly encourage you in the next 2 weeks, right? Usually it's on Tuesdays, I push them out. The first one with ways to make money with AutoHotkey. Let me give you a little background on it. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah.
I did believe you were, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sometimes I, forget. I had, so I was working on, because I plan to make a lot more like AutoHotkey courses and really develop my YouTube stuff. And I was sitting here literally at the computer learning how to get, make my YouTube channel better. And it dawned on me of like, hey, should I really spend my time doing that? And so I took a step back and said, what are different channels? What are different ways that, like for me with the Automator, what can I do to make money with AutoHotkey? And I broke them into, I don't know, Jackie, what, like 7 topics?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And then I came up with, I don't know, 5 to 6 ways to evaluate each one of those things. And I went through it, and then I actually had individual calls with quite a few people talking it through. And then we did one with Jackie in the podcast. So I just said, let's share it and just show everyone kind of, here are ideas, right? Here's the ways that you can make money with AutoHotkey or whatever. So that was the first one. And then we invited these guys to participate in a discussion about one particular column of that. That was the creating software column, which I thought everyone here, because the other avenues are more with like creating courses and YouTube and other things. But the creating software, I thought there'd be a lot of interest by some groups. And some of these guys have created software in the past and have sold things. And so we got their input as we went through it. And that was, I think both of those were really, really fascinating podcasts.
Yeah, I felt they were good.
So let's move on to the next one. What I wanted to announce, yay, Isaiah's, or you may know him as Raptor X, or on YouTube as AHK Toots. We got to talk. Actually, it's funny because wasn't that why we even had the call, Isaiah's? It was to review that spreadsheet, and we got to talking, and it just turned out it was a really good fit. So he's now working with me, and our goal is we're going to be creating, we have a couple goals. One is to start really creating high quality, top-notch, courses teaching not only AutoHotkey, but basically, automation and stuff. And then the other one is to start creating some software. So I'm really excited that he's, and it's funny, I told him this, I think at one point, I said, I can literally say his was the first YouTube video on AutoHotkey that I had ever seen. I learned from watching his videos, and this is like 7 years ago, how to do some like DLL calls and send and post message. And I must have watched them like 50 times. I mean, I kept playing them over and over. but I'm really excited to be having him work with me, because to me, I was just like, wow, he did amazing stuff. And he explains things really well. So I'm excited. What I'm going to do, I would love to do, I'm going to put this in here, and you'll probably all get this emailed to you as well, but I'm going to put it here in the chat. And that is, I put together a short survey. It should take about 2 minutes to take. And what we'd love is to go through, and we outlined a bunch of possible courses that we're considering doing. So if you could take that survey and just, answer which ones that you're more or less interested in, it'll help us. I don't think it's going to necessarily prevent us from doing any of them, or, we're going to do all of them, but it will definitely change our priorities on where we focus first, right? So that'd be great. And we're going to give away, up to, basically you can say which one of these are you interested in, and then we're going to give away 10 of people will win one of the courses that they selected. We'll just let you guys pick and choose. So we got that going on. If you could take that again, you'll get the link in the email as well. The next thing, so here is our script highlight, and this one, let me here's just a little screenshot of it. I have it here in studio, and let me I think it's actually running. Yeah, and now this is actually looking at itself, if that makes any sense. But let me drag in, so my main script, I'm going to drag this in and drop it on here, and this allows you to take any AutoHotkey file and kind of peek inside it and see how many hotkeys, how many hot strings. You can even get an idea of them, right? So I thought it was a really cool little script that you can kind of get an idea, and you don't have to launch the script, right? It doesn't matter if that script is running or not. It just kind of looks inside it and gives you some insights as to what's available. So, and honestly, I found this one on the forum, boy, I'd say like at least 8 years ago. It's been a long time.
That's the old forum. Do you have any? Do you remember who it was, or is it in there somewhere?
Oh wow! Look at that. It's right here, 2015. Boy, I did the math fairly close. Not bad.
Yeah. And you have the URL, and and it's even the new forum, not the old one, apparently.
I think I found a repost of it.
Fair enough.
Is my guess, but yeah. Anyway, so it was and you know what? Now it's coming back to me. I actually remember sitting here working. It's weird how sometimes you can remember some things, right? I remember finding this thing going, I don't understand what is this thing? And then if I remember right, someone was saying it's kind of like for security reasons, right? You can peek inside of it and get an idea of it without launching it. That's how it's pitched.
Fair enough.
And I see AJ asked if the podcast is available on iTunes or Castbox. No, it's on the Automator. But now also I didn't mention it because the person will probably be unseen. But I also hired a virtual assistant to help with day-to-day stuff, and so I will probably definitely consider putting the podcast on either iTunes, especially iTunes, right? That's a huge one. I think if I remember right, some of those actually have fees to them, but we'll look at it.
Tidbit's possibly a hero script scanner. I have never heard that name before. Is that something fairly new he's made, or is it actually on the forum? It's amazing. I've scoured that forum at times, so
possibly
it's it's an older. Then that might be why.
It's been quite a while since I've scoured anything, Jackie. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but again, it depends on which year we're in, right?
I know.
How much I actually did that.
Podbean is free. Yeah, cool. Thanks, AJ. I'll take a look. So that's where we are. Again, if you guys could take that survey, and everyone that's registered to this, you'll get it in an email, and I'm going to send it to a lot of people, because we just want some good direction on what to work on first. So that'd be awesome. Now, does anybody have anything to share? Anything they want to work on? Any problems they've run into? Well, Geek Dude, no one else has said anything yet. So do you want to? Let me stop sharing. Do you want to?
That would be great. We'd love to look more at CloudAHK.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a very cool tool. Oh, look, Geek Dude's doing his promo now. He's got his Toyota hat on. He's where he makes his money.
So last summer I was working summer camps with kids, and one of the things we did was a factory tour of Toyota, and they gave out hats.
Cool.
Nice.
So since last time, I've built this landing page here, which kind of discusses about the project. The very first item on the CloudAHK website is the drag and drop editor. You can click here and enter the editor. But if you don't want to do it on the web, you can click here and get a zip file with a Neutron, AutoHotkey Neutron script that encapsulates the website into a portable AutoHotkey script. Go ahead and jump in the editor here. Let's see, last time there weren't a ton of blocks specific to AutoHotkey. It was mostly just general add two numbers, do some text operations. But up here on the left, there's a new system tab that has a lot of the system interop functions from AutoHotkey. Mm-hmm. And they're not a perfect one-to-one matching from Blockly or CloudAHK over to AutoHotkey. And that's mostly because some AutoHotkey commands are phrased really unintuitively. Like run wait, what does that mean? What's the difference from run? So in the CloudAHK drag and drop editor, it says run, target, and then you get a drop down here. Nice. Do you want to continue immediately or do you want to wait? And you've got blocks for on-clipboard change and other clipboard actions. We've got the full set of file and folder options, copying, moving.
When you, I'm just asking and interrupting. When you hover over them, I'm seeing these tooltips, checks for the existence of a file or folder. Could you like have this synonym of in there as well, like with run, where it covers both run and run wait? Just an example.
I could certainly put more information in there. What I've done so far is whatever the primary action of the block is, I have taken the help page from the documentation and just grabbed this blurb up here. So that, where it's not a one-to-one mapping, I'm definitely going to need to go back in and tweak those to be more useful to the user. Because here it says runs an external program. Well, it also does the run wait action, so it should maybe include something about that. It's to be decided still.
Yeah, it's just the tooltip only seemed to include up to the first dot, or isn't that the full stop? What's the name of that?
Period.
Period. Yeah, sure. That's just what I called right there.
So back to the editor here. We've still got the key press block. That's for your hotkeys. You can put in a modifier if you'd want. So on key press, control and enter. And that's generated the code over here for control enter. Or if you don't want to run some code, you just want to do a remap, That's been added since we've last looked at it. So remap key A to key B. I do acknowledge that the white text on a yellow background is not the best combo. Theming is something that's on the to-do list. It's tricky because most code editors, they do have, all these separate callers for things, but it's not broken up by like, what does the command do so much as, is it a command? Is it text? Is it whatever? So I can't just pull from an existing resource to inform my caller choices. If anyone has suggestions on callers, I'd be more than glad to hear them. Down here under the Advanced tab, we have some blocks here that weren't there previously. There's the any AutoHotkey code block, and I think a lot of people who already know AutoHotkey are going to really like this block. Whatever you put in that block, it just copies over into the code directly. So if you wanted to do a ELL call for something, you can just go in and do it. Or if I've failed to make a block.
So, sorry, you're just basically enabling anything that's not in the list? Is that why you do that, or
Yeah. Right now, there's a handful of blocks I've implemented, but there's many times that commands that AutoHotkey can run that I haven't or don't even plan to implement.
Yeah, right.
So this really opens it up to people who do know what they're doing. And once I get the like code snippet sharing system, you'll be able to import other people's blocks where they've maybe used one of these, and you can take advantage of it without having to know how to do it yourself.
It's awesome. You and I, we're going to have a little side conversation of, I wonder if we could somehow incorporate this into the AutoHotkey courses and help use it to teach, right? Because I think the visual aspects of it really, truly, especially it's the combination of the stuff on the left and you see the stuff on the right, right? That is such a powerful way to, when tools like Automation Anywhere, you use a GUI for doing stuff, but you don't see the code necessarily directly right behind it. And when you see both, to me, that's where suddenly I can really, truly learn, like, oh, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I love it.
These blocks, are they positional, where you put them in the 2D plane compared to where you see them in the script, or?
They are, and the way that comes through is not necessarily immediately apparent. I've written the code behind so that all hotkeys get grouped together, and then all functions get grouped together. And I think there might be another category or two that I grouped together. So then the relative position of that class of object or block or whatever you want to call it will affect how it shows up within its own section. So having a function up here, it will not show up at the top of the code. It will show up at the top of the function section.
Okay, and the run is because they're positional or whatever you'd call those. Normally, you have them here in the auto execute section. So because you wouldn't jump to them, you would expect it. How about you have a function definition here? How about if you wanted to call that function in the code?
down here under the Functions tab, whenever you create a function, it will auto-populate a statement block and an expression block, where you can call it just like that, or put it in an expression.
And if you put in a call Fibonacci as an example, and didn't connect it to the other ones, how would it look in the code then?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The call Fibonacci, the last one, if you remove that from, like so.
Oh, it grays out and goes away.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, makes sense.
There was an option to where I could make it still show up in the code, but show up as commented. But I thought with the way that everything gets grouped and rearranged, that might be really unintuitive for some people.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I figured just better to have it gray out.
Yeah, good call.
See, if I want to create a new function, that takes me over to this other page where I can hit these buttons down here and say I want a number input or a text input. AutoHotkey doesn't really care what type your input is, so these are probably going to go away, and there's just going to be an add input button. But with how it is currently, you can see that it's actually set this Boolean input as a hexagonal shape input. And so when I go to call that new function, it gets populated with a number, a string, and a hexagonal true false.
Oh.
So that might be helpful or not. I'm really going to have to dig deep here. What do people want? Because the end goal really is to make something that people want to use.
Yeah.
And your goal of finding out what makes the most sense is sadly it's a really hard one, because for the general your target audience, almost by definition, doesn't know what they're doing, so to speak. You know what I mean? So it's really hard for them to have a consistent answer, because it's going to be more on their preferences, and yet those aren't necessarily, tied to the best overall. Is that making sense? Like the overall, it's not derived from knowledge, it's how it feels to them. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, that's a high goal. I'm happy to, and I have a master's in market research. If you want help at all doing any sort of a survey, I'm happy to help, gather input with you, help you.
Yeah, I'm thinking, as how I understood it, Geekdude, was that you were hoping that more immediate or whatever people would also be willing to use something like this, just to help others. From what you said, with people using any AutoHotkey code, so others could reuse it and stuff like that. And I'm just thinking that most new people to AutoHotkey wouldn't perhaps make a del call blog, but they would be happy to use something that someone else had pre-made. So, sure. Yeah. So,
sorry for cutting you off, Jackie. Dale wanted to know: can you make an edit in the code on the right? Will it update the stuff on the left? Will it update?
That is a solid no, because of that lack of a one-to-one mapping from the block code to the AutoHotkey code.
Right. Yeah.
AutoHotkey is a great tool. It has all sorts of very fancy constructs with classes and things that don't really translate into the block realm. If you look at the function definitions here, the user-defined functions, Fibonacci and do something, both start with the word global. And if you've stuck around the community long enough, I'm sure somebody has told you, oh, no, don't
Right.
do that.
Right.
But here I am writing a tool that specifically does that thing everyone says not to do. But that's because the block code doesn't really understand. If you have a variable in the block code, you can drag and drop that variable anywhere in the code.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Geek Dude, you did something with when you recreate another copy, it iterates them. Is that right? Of a variable. Something.
Yeah, if you try to create a variable by the same name as another variable, it will try to sort out what should be called what. Like if I create a variable and call it a_index, you can see in the code up here, it's just called that a_index2 in the code. Because it's prioritizing making code that works over anything else.
Yeah, and my point was, it doesn't negate all the reasons why you don't want to use global, but one of them is that you accidentally repurpose a variable, and then you're using the same one, and maybe that'll help a little with that.
You know, Geek Dude, I know we asked a similar question last time, but about this renaming of the variable with a index and it calling it 2 over in the AutoHotkey side, could you somehow catch that it did that before implementing the actual variable name in the blocks?
I'm sure it would be possible, but how that would look like and how that would be expressed to the user that they shouldn't do that.
Yeah, to me,
I'm
it's
not
like,
sure yet.
I was just like, okay, I want to create a variable called a_index and press OK. And before I then got the variable, I was told that, oh, a variable of that name already exists. So this is now called a_index2 or whatever. Just
variable, right?
Yeah, it's just a thing. I'm not sure if it's worth using much time on, but yeah, to me, it's just like it's creating variables that are no longer called what I thought they were.
So basically, that falls into the category of always letting know the user when something is not going the way that they're expecting that it is going. That is part of user design, user experience design. And basically what it means is that if the user is expecting something and your code or your program is not doing that, there should be kind of like a little, it does not have to be like something big or whatever, but it has to be something that informs the user of that change. Usually you should not change, you should not do changes without informing the user. That's what is going on.
If it's possible. I don't want to make that something that actually stops a project like this. But yeah, it's just a small thing.
Anything is possible with enough monkeys on typewriters. If you did want to use the actual a_index, it's not in there. But this block here is supposed to have all of the AutoHotkey built-in variables, at least all the ones prefixed with A.
It's not because it's not within a loop?
A loop?
Or is that just...
Well, I built the block, and I can tell you it doesn't know anything about loops.
No, fair enough.
With how Blockly was designed, the idea is more you grab a loop and then variables relevant to that loop are draggable out of that loop block. and I haven't gone through yet and customized it for AutoHotkey style loops. But you would have something here like repeat 10 times with index, and then you could grab the word index and use that as a variable.
So
that's a roadmap item right there.
This is really nice.
Absolutely. Very, very cool.
So here in this folder, I have all of the code as published on the website. And this is the desktop version of the code that uses that Neutron library to make an AutoHotkey GUI of a website.
Yeah.
So here it acts very much like the web editor with a few key differences. The first is that you have window buttons, maximize, minimize, and close. The second is that you get this run button, which will actually run the code that was generated as a script. And then third, you have this little black box down here, which will capture anything that the script sent to the standard output. Standard output is a concept that AutoHotkey never really embraced. So a lot of you coders out there who have just used AutoHotkey may be unfamiliar, but where AutoHotkey uses the message box as its primary way of outputting text, a lot of other languages use a print statement. And what that'll do is it'll take the text and append it to some kind of log that you can see, and then continue immediately, whereas a message box will pop up with the text and then wait for you to dismiss it. Here, my print block, you can give it multiple values if you want to show more than one thing at a time. Give it some text here. And that gets translated into a function call where the function is automatically defined for you in the code. How this works specifically isn't so important, but the gist of it is that it tries to pop up a console window and then writes text into it. Because of some changes I made yesterday, it no longer shows up in the box down here. But I can very quickly go and fix that. Message box, print.
As a side note, while he's doing this, when Geek Dude and I were working through the Chrome stuff, at one point I asked him about the standard out, and boy, you gave me a really great tutorial on it, and it was fascinating of how AutoHotkey is built and how it doesn't necessarily access it directly, but you made a tweak to your version or recompiled it, right?
We could do a whole webinar on standard output.
No, you could do one.
It's a collaborative effort.
It was real, because here was the thing, right? Years ago, I was reading, I was trying to use it, and if I remember right, I think Jean's, we had a question on the debug of using something, maybe something around it, but there's like little documentation about it. even though you'll find people using it, but no one explains what it is and how it works and everything. And anyway, yeah, that's fascinating.
So I've made some changes to the back end, but I don't want to lose my code when I reload. So up here, I have a brand new save menu that does a nice little JavaScript pop-up with an encoded version of your block code. So you can copy that. And then I'm going to reload my local version here. And then go into load and paste that copied code. And it'll load up all the block code that you had saved. One of the future changes between the web version and the desktop version is that rather than showing a JavaScript pop-up, it will show like a file dialog, and you can actually save and load from file. But you'll still be able to get to the text pop-up if you really wanted to. Anyway, new code. Let's run that again, and I'll narrate what's happening. First, we get a message box with hello world, top of the auto execute section. And you'll notice that the script name is an asterisk. And that is because of how it sends this code to AutoHotkey without actually putting it in a file first. Not super relevant to what you'll be doing unless if you want to reference the a_script_dir variable, or I guess script name, because where it's not actually getting put in a script file, those come through kind of funky. But then after that message box, we get down here, a hello in our black box down here. And when I run the script again, it clears that out, so you get a fresh log every time. And one thing that I'm sure has frustrated many people is, you show a message box with a list, or an array, as AutoHotkey calls it. You get a blank message box. The print function, though, if you try to give it a list or something, it'll substitute with the text object or something else. I'm not sure yet what I want for that. And this keys you in that you're looking at those list items. And then what I'm going to have just under this input-output section is a block you can use to convert from a list or an object into text so that it can be shown. So you'll see, oh, that's an object, and then you can go and grab the appropriate block and run it again and see what's actually in the object.
Some kind of stringify.
Exactly. And I don't do that just directly, because someone who's grabbing one of these print blocks to see how it works, I don't want to scare them away. That's the gist of it. I was talking with Cloaker in the Discord about it last night.
Just for some of you who don't know, sorry, Discord is a great live place to interact with people and share screens and work on stuff. If you're not using it, it is a great place where people hang out and can help you.
For sure. And that's exactly why I turned to it last night. I asked, I'm considering how to do this print block in CloudAHK. This is one of the print functions I'm considering.
Yeah, that would scare people away. Yeah.
What's really great about this one is that it does all of the stringify and everything to output valid AutoHotkey code. But you look at it and it is just scary. So we said, CloudAHK is supposed to be a beginner's tool. You look and go at things block by block. Probably shouldn't combine all of the functionality into one thing straight off the bat.
Well, I think it's important too because if you actually did, let's say, because you could hide the whole print block, I'm sorry, the function, the stringify function, right? You could kind of hide it behind the scenes, but that would actually be teaching people the wrong thing because they would think, oh, all I have to do is this, and look, I get this output. No, you don't. There's actually something else going on. So now, having said that, like I use Maestриus message box, and he has a built-in tool, just like you're describing here. And I never go look at that class, right? I love it because I can peek inside of objects. It detects if it's an object and does it for me. But I think you're right. I know, when I see an object or not. But when you're totally new to it, I think you're right. You don't want to mask that entirely.
No, and if you actually want to teach people AutoHotkey, they should be somehow told that if you try to show the contents of an object, you need to do something extra. So putting a print with a stringify with the object in would tell people that they're doing something extra to actually view the content of the object. So I think that would make the most sense, even though it would be convenient.
One quick thing. If the output on the code is well documented, like for example, it has a lot of commentary of what is going on, I think that's a good learning tool because people, of course, this is a beginner's tool, but basically you do want to introduce some advanced concepts in some time. And maybe if the block is well documented of what is going on, maybe that would be kind of like a good idea for them to kind of dive into it on a ground that they're already comfortable with. They can start with the blocks and so on, and you have the options of not showing anything at the message box, right? And the other option that you have available is this one, and when they put it, the code is actually commented out in a way that actually explains what is going on.
Yeah, but if you had a stringify function or a block, and you put it in the message box, the effect of it would probably be the same as putting it in the print. So the stringify one to tell the person doing it that I'm now stringifying my object would be a learning thing, even if you also commented the stringify function and stuff. But to me, it would just make more sense instead of making a very complex print function that people wouldn't immediately use for whatever type of thing because it seems so complex. They're very happy with the functionality, but why not separate them into two things so that they actually know that they need to stringify their object to print it? To me, that would make more sense.
Indeed.
One of the options available to me to kind of key in the user how to use a block, because it may not be immediately obvious. I want to print a list. I should use the stringify. One of the options available to me is that I can have multiple copies and variants of a block right next to each other in the block picker. So I can have one that's print without anything populated, and then I could have one that's print with a number, a text, and a stringified object. So they could see, oh, I just need to use stringify if I want a list.
Yeah.
I don't know that there are any examples of that specifically. I guess this one's good. There's a create list with numbers, create list with text, and it's the same block. It's just 2 entries in the block picker.
Mm.
My only request, Geek Dude, is what I'd like you to do is to travel back in time about 7 years and create this then. So I have this to learn AutoHotkey in.
Well, so I've got this roadmap of projects I want to do and the steps I need to take to complete them. And Time Machine is pretty far down the list. So you're going to have to take a number.
Okay. I seriously, I get goosebumps. I think this is really one of the things that can really open up AutoHotkey to even more people. And here's the thing, right? Also, like, which we all have talked about at different times. AutoHotkey is kind of the gateway. And often people come in for botting or gaming, right? But I think having something like this really might help some of those people stop just saying, "How do I click here?" Right? They can start learning it, and when you see the code and you see these blocks, and you're like, "Oh, wow! You know what? I can do this." Right? It's empowering. I think that's awesome.
It is.
So I think we've mostly exhausted the visible, tangible parts of this that currently exist. So I'd like to move on a little bit to what I have planned for the future with it, and a bit about how it works behind the scenes. Because there's a lot of cool tech there that I haven't yet shared with anyone.
Cool.
So we can get started with the roadmap, I guess. Cloud AutoHotkey is not intended to be just this editor, but rather a suite of tools for working with AutoHotkey online.
Mm-hmm.
So here there's the CloudAHK editor, but over in the Discord, there's also this command that you can run with the bot where you can run AutoHotkey code in the live chat, and it gets sent to the Cloud AutoHotkey server, which responds with the output, and the bot spits it back out.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So something that includes that technology is also going to be available with a front end here. Right now, it's exclusive just to the bot because that's the primary use case that I've imagined for it. There are a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't do with this. The computer that's running the AutoHotkey code is isolated from the internet, so you can't use any networking tools like URL download to file or HTTP requests. Because it's running on a remote machine that you don't have direct access to, hotkeys aren't a thing. You can put it in the code and it'll run fine, but you won't have any way to trigger it. If you do a message box to pop up something, you can't click to dismiss it or currently even see that it's popped up. So some limited use cases are still available, but it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution. Mostly we use it in the chat to talk about more text parsing kinds of things, like the regular expression help chat. It sees a lot of use in there. Someone will say, I have this data, I want to do a regular expression on it, and I need some help. And then you can provide them the code to do the processing and demonstrate that it works. Whereas if they wanted to put it in a tool like regex buddy, it doesn't always match up one-to-one with how AutoHotkey behaves.
Yeah.
I'm sure anyone who's used it
I have, yeah.
can tell that.
Yeah. Hey, Geek, I had a question getting back to, because I love the idea also of having people, especially like on Discord or wherever, offering to help work with you. The URL for CloudAHK, like let's say I'm in there and I create my design, my code, right? And then I'm working on it and I say, I'd like some help. Is that URL unique, an instance that can be shared with other people? So we don't have to do a screen share. Can they navigate to that same URL?
Currently, no.
No.
I know in the past I've fiddled around with live sessions like that, especially for the AutoHotkey paste bin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I was using like a plug-and-play collaboration system that worked really well when you just have a text input and that's the entire website. But with something that has as many moving parts as this does, it gets a lot harder to implement something like that. But that doesn't mean it's off the roadmap entirely. There are some good demos put out by Google, who designed the control. My phone thinks I'm talking to it. So Google designed this control, and they have some demos where you can mirror from one of these block editors to another in real time. But it doesn't have any networking code, so I'd need to set something up with that. But something that is on the roadmap for more immediate implementation is kind of like a paste bin for block code.
Cool.
To where I can be editing it and then I take a snapshot more or less of my blocks as they currently are, and that's what I send to someone to look at.
Which I think, yeah, I think that'd be fine, right? It's just, it helps facilitate, someone else can look at the thing, and it doesn't have to be live, always dynamically changing for each of you. That'd be nice, but it's not, yeah.
Yeah, the load and save function already gets you a bit of the way, right? You can share your block code, and someone can edit it and share it back to you. It's not the same thing, but it's close.
Well, you could add a little other tool to help facilitate that sharing of that code, right? And then you're pretty close to there.
Yeah, you could probably implement some way to send to an email or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to have a full account system set up to where you can save things to your account.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have maybe some kind of project picker where you can jump into a project and make changes. But that's a little further out. I'm mostly focusing on front-end things right now.
Yeah, but I was like, the normal sharing sign, the square with the arrow out, something like that. Very simple of actually just sending the same thing as you would have saved.
For sure.
Code there, yeah.
One of the methods I was thinking up for how to do that, Jackie, was to add a button that would just take this block code and pop it over onto the paste bin.
Yeah.
And then some way to give it a paste bin URL or even just this 8-character identifier,
Yeah.
and have it pull that block code in. Just something to simplify it from a user.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you the code that you're saving in there, when you click on save, that particular code, I'm not sure how your load function works, but if you could pass that as a URL, like for example, I click on share and it gives me a URL that when I click on load, or when I visit that URL, it just loads the code automatically. There would be like a time saver right there.
For sure. Right now, this code, there, even for a simple set of blocks, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
So having the code itself in the URL isn't necessarily a good idea. I think it would work. I'm not sure on that. But you're definitely right there where having a URL pop up when you save would be a good user experience.
Well, I'm not sure about encoding functions and decoding functions, but basically you could encode all of that into a hash or something and then decode it later on. And then you have kind of like a steady number of characters that you can just share about. I don't know.
Yeah.
The URL length is normally limited to 2 megabytes. So.
You
Okay.
can do a lot in 2 megabytes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that hits most of the editor components and the run, but there are still 2 more tools that I intend to add to this website that are currently on the roadmap, which are compile from the web and decompile from the web. And I'll explain what I mean here one at a time. Compile from the web, I want you to be able to take some AutoHotkey code that you've written maybe in the block editor or that you've had from the AutoHotkey forum that someone shared, and you can pass it to the cloud compiler and it'll create an exe out of that for you. Where the main use case for this is you're maybe out using a computer other than your home computer, and you have a script that you want to pull down, or you have a script that you want to just write quickly with block code, and then you want to run it on that computer, but that computer doesn't have AutoHotkey installed. So rather than going and grabbing a portable AutoHotkey or installing AutoHotkey, you could, straight from the block editor, have a button that says save as exe, for example.
Mm.
So that's use case number 1. Use case number 2 is that I want people who are distributing their scripts to be able to use it as a way to demonstrate that the exe that they're sharing in the forum post is actually derived from the code that they have in the forum post. Because that's been a big sticking point with a lot of people. Like they say, I want to share this and I want to share it as an exe so that people can just download it and run it, but people don't trust me. So I hope to alleviate some of that.
Hey, can we back up to your other one? I was just thinking it through, and I'm trying to think. I mean, granted, I'm not this elaborate programmer in dozens of languages, but do other languages, can you name some that have that functionality where you can actually say, come in here, do some code, and actually hit a button, and it's going to create a compiled script that you can download? Like, I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere.
Nothing comes to mind, no.
It's very cool because, and I think almost everyone in this call I know is at that level where you realize the fact that you can in AutoHotkey write a code, right click it and say compile, and it's done in 2 seconds, if that, and you can give it to someone else. It's crazy insane, right? That's most other languages aren't like that. But the fact that what Geekdu's talking about, it's even one level beyond that now, right? It's like you can do this without even having it at your computer. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why other tools don't have something like that. Maybe no one's thought of it. Maybe there's not any demand. Maybe I'll get it implemented and then see, oh, that's why they're not doing it.
Right.
There were some concerns about me sending people exe files over the net. Maybe like an antivirus vendor wouldn't like that. It'd trip up their Norton WebSafe, whatever.
Yep.
But I figure let's try it and see, Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I know other languages have like cloud compiling, but yeah, I think the limit would, or the issue could be that sending exes. But yeah, everybody can still, for the most part, download exes, right? Chrome doesn't always like it, but yeah, it really does depend.
The third and final use case for the cloud compiler that I've conceived is that a lot of people have AutoHotkey projects up on GitHub. And something that GitHub has been working on lately is their continuous integration system. And that's a funny term that means having everything just kind of flow through from you write the code to you release the project happen automatically. So I want to be able to offer Cloud AutoHotkey as a kind of compiler tool that you can plug into something like GitHub, where whenever you want to make a release of your source code, it will generate the exes automatically alongside with it. Know that Lentilist, this guy does a lot of stuff with AutoHotkey. He's got this whole big program that uses components from AutoHotkey, some that I've written even. And you go to, let's see, does he do releases on here? Yeah, here it is. You go here and you look, there's source code zip, and then there is a zip here with his compiled project. You can see lentilist.exe. I want people to be able to use CloudAHK so that when they make a release on something like GitHub or GitLab or whatever code tool they're using, that it'll just make the exe and the zip for them. They don't have to touch it. And that also goes toward, trust. I don't know, a lot of people, even who use GitHub, know, unless if they've made releases themselves, these zip files and exes, other than the source code, can be whatever. I can just drag and drop whatever there. This file doesn't necessarily have anything to do with these files. It could be some weird malicious thing that I've uploaded to try to trick you. You see my project and it says, oh, this script just has one hotkey that pops up hello. And then in my releases, I'd drop a exe file that actually steals your bank password.
So you would tie it directly to the AutoHotkey, the main one from Lexicos or something. Is that what or yours or whatever? But
right, just some way for them to demonstrate that it's out of their hands. You know, they couldn't have tampered with it.
I like it.
And then we've got the Cloud Decompiler, and I've been talking a lot with people on the Discord about this, how it should work, what it should do, why people should use it or not use it. And we get into a lot of discussions that have been going on since AutoHotkey was, first built, which is, do you provide decompiler tools and then make it easier for people to steal other people's intellectual property? Or do you pretend that scripts can't be decompiled and then people get surprised when it happens? And then there's the question of you have this AutoHotkey exe that you want to make sure isn't doing anything tricky before you run it. And if you can't decompile it, how can you see, is it attacking your registry? Is it logging keystrokes? You just don't know. And so the current vision for the Cloud Decompiler is to allow people to upload EXEs, and then if it's a trivial decompilation where they could have just opened the file in like Notepad and scrolled down and saw the source code, it'll go ahead and give you the source code from it. But if it's a more advanced protection scheme, I can implement the bypasses for those to decompile and then run a tool that checks for kind of sketchy behavior against that source code, like that tidbits, possibly a hero script, where it looks for calls to DLL call or registry reading or file IO. And then it would give you a report that would say, we didn't detect anything, but we can't really confirm that it's safe. Or it would say, we noticed the script is accessing the registry key for your Windows license. And that's probably not okay. At the end of the day, it's really up to you if you want to run it. But this tool would help you figure out if it's definitely malicious.
Is it a hero or potentially a hero? Could that be the tool instead of a straight up decompiler? Just how often would you need a true decompiler that would show you the source code if you had the other thing for checking for security reasons instead of giving people the source code of whatever? If you could view all functions or all whatever variables and stuff instead of actually offering the source code of the thing.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to strike a balance, I think, because on the one hand, a tool like this probably should exist, but on the other hand, actually building and distributing such a tool has there's some legal ramifications as far as the Millennium Digital Copyright Act. It has some clauses about reverse engineering. Where does that come in, if at all? I know you're allowed to do reverse engineering for security research purposes. Would this qualify, and what features can I add before it no longer is security research? it's definitely a tricky subject, and I'd be more than glad to hear people's thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, for me, to Jackie's point, it might, knowing a tool like that existed, that you were originally describing, it might prevent me from saying, you know what, AutoHotkey could be the tool that I'm going to use for creating this, because, hey, it's so easy for someone to decompile and peek inside it, right? And I know from talking to you, right, one of your goals is to get people using AutoHotkey for things. But on the other hand, it's obviously it is a thing, right? It's something that can be done. So just the fact that you don't create it doesn't mean it can't be decompiled. So it's good to know at the same time, right? So
yeah, and you know, it's not even AutoHotkey that's plagued by this decompiler problem. Even something as high profile as, say, Minecraft, the most sold video game in the world, there have been people decompiling it and picking it apart for years and years and years, to where if you want to just go browse the source code as interpreted by someone else, you can do that. And it's because Java, like AutoHotkey, is hard to protect. Your source code doesn't get, I guess, mangled quite enough during the compilation process to where it can be reversed, but you lose a lot of things like variable names and function names. So whereas with AutoHotkey, you can just see the code as written. Something like Java, you see the code where everything's been substituted with a different name, which is better protection. And there are tools for AutoHotkey to provide that kind of protection, where it kind of shifts everything around and renames it, such as this tool. And I want to, in the future, either include things from this tool or work on my own tool to offer that kind of protection for people, especially with the cloud compiler, to where one day the scene might be, oh, actually, it is really easy to protect AutoHotkey scripts now.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
I was just going to say that anybody with enough time on their hands is going to decompile or reverse engineer any type of code, even high-level languages, about low-level languages like C or C++. Some people, they find the way. So basically, you have to just put kind of like a limit to up to where you're going to obfuscate your code, because even that, if somebody really wants to know what you're doing, they're going to find a way.
Yeah, but to me, it's like if you offer a tool as an online decompiler, as you started saying, was as soon as it's not just plainly visible at the bottom of opening with a text file, that's like where my limit would go. Like if it's just visible by opening the file, everybody could do it. That's fine. Show people that code. But as soon as someone has implemented whatever, I don't care what they did, as soon as that's not possible, then people have acted to not wanting their thing to be decompiled. And then I'm unsure if I should just do it as easily as uploading it online somewhere. Because then you get into all the things that Geek Dude is talking about. When are you then going in on people's intellectual property? When are you maybe ruining whatever people have you spent time on? Even though you can find more powerful decompiling tools otherwise, right, people need to do something extra to get the source, which is fine. It's just a matter of not making it much easier than what people did to make it hidden. It's just make the work to hide it as meaningful as making the work to show it, right? It's that's like what I'm.
And I think, Jackie, also you were bringing up, there are very good reasons you want to at least be able to peek inside and see, is it doing something nefarious? And you can do that without giving away, the kit and caboodle, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you, Jackie. I had a question, and I happened to be talking to Jean earlier today about this, just in general, in that he has and Jean, jump in here if you want. You pay for some sort of a security thing to not license, but basically say your executable that you create is quote unquote safe. And what got me really interested, Geek Dude, was when you were talking about how, hopefully you could tie it inside like GitHub to say, here is we tied ours to this executable, and here is my script, and that is what is actually, basically put together, and it created this executable. That could we leverage the knowledge of the security that's already been done on the executable, and would that carry it over? And that way people like John and I don't have to spend, I forget, Jean, I think he said it's let's say it's like $150 a year, roughly, ballpark. Did that make sense?
Yeah, that's a code certificate.
Thank you.
To digitally sign your executable file, so that if it is modified by someone else, it will be flagged as potentially dangerous or unknown source, if you wish.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the idea of signing executables, but I haven't yet decided where that might fit into all of this. Mm-hmm. I'd imagine that it's frowned upon to go and just sign code that's not yours.
Right.
But I don't know. I haven't looked into it a whole lot.
Well, the signature, it's a step after you compiled. You run a command, and I'm using InnoSetup as a tool to package my software, so I have to do a setup file, and the script of InnoSetup also include an option to sign the file after it's compiled. So it's all included in the process with this. But if you don't use it, it's a step that you execute to call I don't remember, because it's so much automatic now that I forgot how it's done. But there's a command that is calling for the certificate somewhere on my drive.
I wonder if that could be built into AHK to EXE sometime in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some configuration required to locate the certificate. Maybe that's all what needs to be done.
Anyway, that's Cloud AutoHotkey in its current state.
Very cool, man.
Good.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody have any questions?
We're what, 20 minutes over the hour mark?
Yeah. Do you want to make a recording switch or whatever, Joe?
Yeah, we'll stop.